think my favorite script is Ada Lovelace. And that's partly because as I was researching her, you know, it's a controversial notion whether or not she created the first computer program, which is something that I discovered. Some of that is semantic, where it's like, you know, is it the first, similarly with Murasaki, you know, she created the first modern novel, right? It depends on how you define that. And the question is did she create the first computer program, the first modern computer program? How do we define that? And, you know, academic's gonna academic, you know, I think that's a reasonable discussion to have. But what I found more disturbing was the amount of discourse around her that had to do with undermining her and suggesting that she actually hadn't contributed something incredible or even anything valuable at all. There was, you know, it's sort of textbook undermining of women, where there's, you know, some people suggest that she didn't write it, that Babbage wrote it, you know, and that, you know, somehow he just gave her those ideas, you know, because I think there's a letter that he wrote where he suggests, he was like, if you want my input, let me know. And they make that jump to like, well, he wrote it. I don't know that that's a fair leap to make, you know, and because she took laudanum at the end of her life, there is some indication she got a little loopy, that people have jumped from that to she was mentally ill. And, you know, they also simply question her intellectual ability. Even though there is all of this evidence from Babbage talking about how amazing she is, there was actually a female mathematician who preceded her, who knew her, and said, essentially, I've never met anyone of this age that was this gifted. If she went to Cambridge, you know, if she were a man, I would say she could become one of the first-rate mathematical minds out there. We have documentation of that, and nonetheless they say she couldn't have had the intellectual capability to do it. As recently as 1991, that was the historian saying she was mad as a hatter. The only thing she had to contribute to Babbage was trouble. And it infuriated me. It infuriated me because in so many of these, we're trying to make a connection to the past. You know, we're trying to take the struggles of these women from the past and find some way to make them relate to the lives of contemporary women, to make that connection. And for most of them, I felt like there were thematic ways to do that. But the Ada Lovelace script, the problem that we were talking about wasn't even happening in the past. It was happening now. The same undermining that she was experiencing then, it never stopped. It continued. It's still happening. You know, so that was the most interesting one to me, because I felt like when we were writing that, we chose deliberately to make that statement. She was the first computer programmer, you know, and to some degree, that's the only script that I feel like is speaking directly to certain people. You know, I feel like from my perspective, it's addressing those critics. We can't go back in time and talk back to the people who harassed or devalued Ida B. Wells or Emma Goldman. But we can look at Ada Lovelace and the legacy that she has and the way that it's treated today, and we can speak to that. So that felt very relevant to me. It felt very powerful to speak to something that is still a problem right now.